Hey, what's up? It's Bond, and today I want to talk about Dragon's Dogma 2. Do, I guess, a review on it, and talk about how it reminds me of Starfield, and why that may not be the bad thing that you assume it is. If you like Dragon's Dogma 2, or Starfield, or just games in general, speculation, reviews, and so on about them, please consider subscribing to this channel. Hit the like button if you like the video, and leave a comment down below if you agree, disagree, or just with your own thoughts, or just to say hello. I would love to hear from you. If you really want to support my videos, my podcasts, or even my supposed streaming career, please consider becoming a YouTube member, and you'll get videos like this a little bit early. Okay, so let's jump into it. So just right off the bat, Dragon's Dogma 2 is easily the most confusing game I've ever decided to make a video about, because I think I like it. When I'm playing it, I'm generally having a fairly good time. It's fun to explore and fight things and complete tasks, to literally check off boxes. It's doing that action adventure RPG-ish open world thing as well as any game I've ever played, except where it isn't. Dragon's Dogma 2 is a really interesting game that for me is probably one of the more polarizing ones since Baldur's Gate 3, except that I think Baldur's Gate 3 might be one of the best games ever made, and I don't think Dragon's Dogma 2 is. But I still kind of like it, but I also don't. Again, I'm confused. I don't really know how to talk about it. One of my big revelations I had was a night or two ago when I was playing Dragon's Dogma 2, and I had this moment of like clarity where I was like, this is like Starfield. And for full disclosure, you listening to this, maybe you didn't like Starfield. You have to get out of that mindset. I loved Starfield. I thought Starfield was so fun. I really enjoyed the story and the characters, especially the combat. I really liked Starfield, acknowledging its weaknesses. And it's that exact thing that made me feel like, while they're very different games and arguably different genres, something about Dragon's Dogma 2 gave me a very similar feeling to Starfield. And I think what it is that while parts of the game, both of them, feel modern and like, they have high fidelity textures and models sometimes. And, like there's this like facade of a modern game because it's in 4K, it's running okay. And, it's got, the UI and stuff seems kind of new. But both games really struggle from the fact that so much of what they are feels 10, 15, 20 years old, and not like in a good way. There's things that just feel old. And I think Dragon's Dogma 2 for me is the first game where I'm going to be a big hypocrite and do the, well, after Baldur's Gate 3 came out, now I really hate that attitude. But it's, I think, especially with Dragon's Dogma 2, feels right. I'll give an example. Light spoilers shouldn't matter for Dragon's Dogma 2. There's a series of missions that you do where you stealth into a castle and have to find things. Now, when these missions came up, I was like, oh gosh, there's not really a clear system. This game's pretty unforgiving. It's been talked about a lot for that. And I thought that I would have to make sure that none of the guards saw me. If they did, I'd have to like talk my way out or fight my way out, whatever. So I'm kind of sneaking around. I'm going into this castle. I'm trying to I'm seeing where guards are. I'm trying to stay out of their line of sight, only to realize after a few minutes, I can just run around. They don't care. None of the guards give a crap that I'm there. I can just run around. I'm assuming as long as I didn't attack anyone or something, even though it explicitly says that you can't be seen in, like you can't enter through the normal entrances of the castle. They say that, visitors aren't allowed at this time. But then if they see you inside, they literally don't care. Culminating in one of the missions where I don't know if I could have escaped it or not, but it seems like you're set up to fail and then to be thrown in jail. So when you wake up and you get caught and you wake up in jail, all your gear is gone, except if you check your inventory from a previous mission where you needed to talk to someone in the jail, you have a jail key. And they took all of your gear, all of your supplies, everything to your person, except this key. Maybe you were storing it in a location unsearched or something. I don't know. But this is a game mechanic choice, right? So then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have this key, but there's guards walking around. I can't, they can't see me as I try to escape. So when the guards are not facing my door, I use the key, I unlock the jail cell, I push through it, only to walk right into one of the guards who doesn't care at all. I'm a prisoner who's just been arrested in the castle, sneaking around where the royals live. They threw me in jail, took away all my gear. And now one of the guards who put me in jail sees me 2 feet away from my open prison cell. Doesn't care. Says hello or something, right? And I'm in like prison garb, right? So then I start kind of cautiously walking around thinking like, okay, like one of these NPCs is going to realize like I'm not supposed to be out of that cell. Never happens. So I'm searching all over this jail area like, hey, where's like, I'm assuming my gear is all in like a box or something somewhere, or I need to pick up like a bag or something. So for a few minutes, I'm looking around, can't find anything, thinking, okay, this is a punishing game. Maybe I just lost all that gear. Like that would be a huge bummer, but okay. So I go to leave. As soon as I leave the jail, all of my gear magically appears back on me. That sequence for me, and it's happened many times with Dragon's Dogma 2, like a lot, where you're in a situation or you're doing something where, especially over the last 10 or 15 years, you've just been trained that if you steal stuff from people, you can't just go pick up everything in these worlds without a risk, right? That, you'll be confronted or arrested or attacked, right? This is true in the old Fallout games, in Baldur's Gate 3, in Starfield. And it makes it so that the world feels a little more real, right? Like you can't just take whatever. Well, in Dragon's Dogma 2, you can just run into every random house and take, they have crates in them that are like where you find loot, and you just run into everyone's house. You run behind the counter in stores. Now in theory, because of the story, maybe someone's going to say, well, you're supposed to be this person, therefore no one cares. BS. And so there's things like that. And there's other things, but we won't go too deep into it today, where the game just, parts of the game seem very cool and modern and fun. But other parts, and I would maybe argue the majority of the game, doesn't. And I think what it all comes down to is that, and this is where my comparison to Starfield comes, it's that same idea. Parts of Starfield are some of my favorite experiences I've ever had. Multiple moments in that game where, at least in the moment, I was really into it and I really enjoyed it. And then there's other parts, right? And I guess what it comes down to for me, kind of my final point about Dragon's Dogma 2, what I think I'm struggling with so much is partly I'm seeing people be like, this is my favorite open world action adventure game ever. This is the lock for game of the year. Like, I like the game and I'll probably keep playing it a little bit, and we'll have to do a spoiler cast one day so I can explain my issues with the end of the game, if that's what we'll call it right now. One of my biggest issues with this game is that I don't know if things that I don't like about it are a purposeful decision, are an oversight, or are them just being stubborn to old ideas? And I would argue that almost every single thing in the game falls into one of those three categories. And I think the category of they're doing it on purpose is doing a lot of heavy lifting for them doing incompetent things or forgetting about them, or being stubborn to their maybe old school design ideas. There's lots of parts of Dragon Dogma 2 that are fun. I've definitely had some nice moments in the story. The one romance I explored, had a few moments where I was like, oh, that's sweet. Like, that's nice. Even though the majority of it is just not very good. The graphics are a weird thing where, like, the vistas and the environments are very pretty. The characters look okay. And then, like, the lip sync is just awful. It's very bad. It's like egregiously bad, which is strange. It's weird. Without getting too deep into it, and this maybe is a little bit story spoilers, so give me 30 seconds if you don't want to hear it. Is when I felt like I was like, oh wow, the game's finally opening up, I'm fairly certain if I wanted to, I could have finished the game in like an hour or two. Is what I've gathered. It feels like the second half of this game just got cut. I'll let you figure out what that means, and maybe we'll talk about more later. But yeah, interesting. It's a weird game. I suspect it'll be a game in my top 10, maybe top 5 by the end of the year. But like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills when I'm seeing people say that this is game of the year, this is the best whatever I've ever played, because it is great. But I think once you get 15, 20, 25 hours into it, you start to realize like, oh, this is a hot mess. They didn't mean to do most of this stuff. And I'm not even advocating that this game should have been easier. I've seen all the conversations about the fast traveling and things like that. I guess the final point I'll make is talking about the fast travel. I recall, and I even re-looked at it today, the article from the head of the studio who made this, basically making fun of fast travel and saying like, well, if your story or your world is interesting enough, people shouldn't want to fast travel. And Dragon's Dogma 2, its world is not interesting enough to not want to fast travel. You are rewarded a little bit for exploration. You can find some interesting situations. There's definitely a enemy variety issue in this game, and the way that mobs respawn and stuff, and the frequency of them in some places is not fun. It makes running around very tedious. And so like, that's definitely one of those, I put that in the stubborn category, right? Where they just, they need to get away from the way they're doing it. And this isn't me asking for it to be easier. It's just when you run back and forth across the whole map enough times, and there's no new experiences, there's nothing variable or really that interesting that happens. I just find it hard to believe that that's really the answer. But after this meandering, almost 15 minutes of me talking, I'm sorry if this isn't the concise review. This is definitely a stream of thoughts thing, because this game just confounds me. I don't really know how to feel about it. I think I like it. This is a game I would give like a 7.5 out of 10, with emphasis that I really, it's fun. And I think I even suggest it to a lot of people, maybe wait for one price drop. But it's a game that I saw people talking about this game being a lock for game of the year. If this game can beat out, like something like Helldivers 2, if the reception of Star Wars Outlaws, Hellblade 2, Dragon Age Dreadwolf, and any other games that come out this year is so bad that this game can win game of the year, I'll be pretty bummed. This is a nice game. It's fun to play, I guess. But I can't get over how it just feels so old. But I'm old, so maybe I'm projecting. that's how I feel so far. I'll probably follow up on the podcast this week or something, some other time. Again, let me know what you think down in the comments below. And if you have like a strong opinion about it, let me know how many hours you've played. Because my first 5 to 10 hours of this game, I had a very different attitude than I do 30 plus hours into it at this point. So, it's not to dismiss your idea. I'm just curious to see where people are at depending on what they say. So indulge me, please. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. If you want more of it, hit the like button as well. If you liked it, comment down below with whatever you want. You can find me as Bond Diesel all over the internet, including over on Twitch, where I stream supposedly a couple times a month at this point. And you can catch my podcast right here on this channel, or on all podcast platforms, the Bonfire podcast and the Mass Effect Hypecast. That's all I have for this one. So until next time.